We're gonna start right off, Charlie, with the Cindy slides. I'm gonna let you come up and speak. We have quite a few online as well.
So, for those of you who didn't have a chance or opportunity to meet or work with Cindy, Cindy was an incredible member of our team. She joined us in December of 2017. And she was exceptional. She was a compliance broker for the Southwest office for many years, and then developed a battle with ALS. And she passed away on Friday. Cindy was just a great human. And if you wanted to see an absolutely exceptional example of what an incredible spouse is, follow Brian's lead. Because Brian was an exceptional partner for her. I mean, he really was incredible. Sorry. So, they're great. And I don't know, I'm a little tongue-tied. I'm not usually like this lost for words, and I had to do this morning at 9 o'clock too. So this is the second time I've had to talk about this, but we'll keep you guys abreast as to the plans for a celebration of life. I believe they're gonna give it a little time and space before that's announced. And I got to give a shout out to this community because whether it was Tina Reddick or Kim Maragni or Mari or everything from years ago when she was first diagnosed in the golf outing that occurred. And I think at the golf outing, they raised like something close to $70,000. Then I know I was a part of something that we made a donation, the Wisconsin Club, where Cindy and Brian golfed. And their golfing partners, I don't know if you knew this, was Janine and Bill Warner. Janine's an agent in the North Shore office. So the Wisconsin Club put together a second golf outing for them. And then we were a part of a grant application to KW Cares where Cindy and Brian were awarded the largest KW Cares grant. That was a few years ago. And then Tina and Mari and a handful of others did what was a really fun night, the prom, last spring to help support Cindy and Brian, and incredible people. And we'll continue to support Brian how we know how. And we'll share with you the details that those plans kind of come together and put into place. But Cindy was a great member of our team for a long time, and I'd be remiss if I didn't say thank you to this community that supported them in so many of a variety of ways over the years. So she'll be missed. That's all I have.
All right. If you guys have questions or need to come and talk with any of the leadership team, come find us, okay? We want to kick it off with a welcome, Bianca Reddick, Breyer, who has joined Team Smith, Wisconsin, and Lovely Jackson. So congratulations and welcome. And we're gonna play this quick little video from Bold for you guys. Maybe. Let's see. It's just working. Yeah. All right. Amber's been kicking off Bold. For those of you guys that haven't gotten to come into the room, you still have a chance. Week 2 is this Thursday happening. If you guys haven't gotten signed up, we'd love to have you. We're right at what, 108? Kathleen? Oh, now it plays. So Don't miss your opportunity to be in the bold room, to see what the excitement is about and to help lead generate. All right, bucket fills. I know it's hard to go after everything that just happened, but yes, go ahead.
I have two.
Yeah.
One to Jordan Wagner for covering for me for a couple of weeks when I was out of town. And one, and if I'm wrong on the name, she knows who she is. Ashley, I think it is. Are you Ashley?
Yes.
Good. Taught an old man how to use chat.
I love it. That's the KW culture, showing someone else how to utilize tools of the business. All right, another bucket fill. Anyone? Anybody have one? Say thank you. For those of you that are new, it's simply that, just saying thank you. Maybe you lent a hand, opened a house, opened a door, helped out. Go ahead, Katie.
So my mom had a really big heart surgery a couple weeks ago, so I've been like working at the hospital, working at her house, and the leadership team, you guys sent an awesome plant to our house, and it was very kind and very unexpected. So thank you.
And she's doing good, right?
Yeah, she's doing great.
Great.
Yeah.
Love to hear that.
Yeah.
All right. Any other bucket fills? Anyone online or before we move on? All right. Let me just check the chat. All right. Then we are going to welcome up Scott Hutchinson is going to come up and he's got a whole spiel to go over with you guys. A whole spiel, and he's got a
Yeah.
fancy clicker.
All right, so real quick, to give Scott, to set up Scott's presentation, how many of you have been paying attention to what's coming down the pipe effective December 1? Yes, some of you not. It will impact every single one of you. Question for you. Have you ever dealt in a transaction where the buyer used an LLC, an S Corp, a C Corp, or any other sort of corporation entity?
Yes.
And if you haven't, you will.
Have you dealt with a transaction where 100% was cash financed?
Yes.
Have you been subpoenaed by the Department of Justice?
No.
I have.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Point being is all of those things are the reason why FinCEN's coming down. This will impact your ability to close. And what Scott's here to present to you today is to help you understand what you will need to be paying attention to in advance of closing. It won't be your responsibility, but we'll need your help and support to get the information to any title or settlement company because they won't close without it. And Scott's going to help us understand what that is.
Thank you so much. for
Yeah,
the intro. Thank you.
thanks, Scott.
Again, my name is Scott Hutchison. I'm with Knightberry Title. And we're going to talk about this FinCEN new rules. Now, interestingly enough, you mentioned that it becomes effective December 1st of 2025. We just heard today that FinCEN has delayed the start of these new rules to, I believe, March 1st of 2026. So there's still a little bit of time to everybody get familiar with them and get some good understanding about it. Has anyone, and again, for those of you, if you've seen some of this, hopefully this is going to provide some additional information for you. For those who haven't, sit back, strap it in, because it's going to be interesting. All right. What we're dealing with here, I'm going to start with this legal update. This is September. This is just this past month's legal update through the WRA, and they summarize things really well here.
Welcome to your legal update, where we review the latest developments in laws and regulations that impact you. This fall, a new force enters real estate. FinCEN. On December 1st, 2025, its powers expand nationwide to stop money laundering and protect the market. Their mission, regulating shadow transactions, all cash deals, properties in trusts or entities, even vacant land intended for homes. No price too small, no corner of the market untouched. On the front line, closing agents, title companies, attorneys, escrow agents. They're the ones who file the FinCEN report. Don't collect this data, but you can prepare your clients for what's required. Sellers provide the basics: name, address, and tax ID. Buyers using LLCs or trusts must unmask their true identity with documents and owner details. Starting December 1st, all cash residential transfers to trusts and entities must be reported to FinCEN. Find the new disclosure form at wra.org/forms.
I'd love to be able to take credit for that, but I can't. Okay. Now, in that minute 15, There's a ton of information packed into there. So let's start dissecting it now. What we're talking about is FinCEN. And FinCEN's an acronym for the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, okay? FinCEN was established in 1970 under the Bank Secrecy Act, okay? And initially, what the job of FinCEN in essence is to combat money laundering and other financial crimes, okay? Well, what they did with respect to FinCEN and starting in 1970, FinCEN was required in the financial industry, in the banking industry, banks, financial institutions had to set up anti-money laundering programs, okay? And they also had to have these suspicious activity report requirements in place, okay? That's where it started from. Now, for example, way back when, even up until now, can all of us walk into our particular bank with a sack full of cash in the amount of $20,000 and deposit it into our account? Can we just deposit it?
Yes.
Sure we can, right? But under the FinCEN rules, the anti-money laundering rules, that bank is going to have an obligation to report that to the IRS. And you, in essence, may be contacted or you may be asked to source out where that money came from, things like that. So now all of a sudden, this may be reported as a suspicious activity through the bank and with FinCEN, with the government, okay? What they try to do here is try to see or monitor patterns of this type of activity. That's the job of what FinCEN's doing. And when you walk in with oodles of cash to deposit into your account, they're tracking that information. Not necessarily to say that you're laundering money, but obviously just to see if there is any kind of pattern of that type of activity, okay? Well, up until, I think it was 1986. In 1986, the FinCEN expanded its rules into residential real estate, okay? And what they started doing was targeting large markets, New York, okay, Manhattan borough in essence, and also Miami, okay, where they started seeing reports of criminals or people who might be on the shady side paying cash for a bunch of real estate, okay? So FinCEN's rules and their requirements really didn't come into play in the real estate world until about 1986. And right around then, what they did was they set up these GTOs called geographic targeting orders. And what they would do is they would have title companies identify and report to the government cash purchase transactions by entities, okay, of real estate transactions because they're buying over a dollar limit, okay? So what they would require then from these title companies is the names of the beneficial owners of these entities and other personal information to submit it to the government so that they can monitor this type of stuff, okay? So really what FinCEN's trying to do is get behind the mask of the entity, find out who owns or get information on who owns the entities, where they're from, and be able to gather that data in order to, again, just have it on file in case there's some sort of a pattern of the activity, okay? Interestingly enough, up until these new rules came into play, the United States was the only G7 country that does not have a comprehensive anti-money laundering rule in place for real estate transactions. Okay, that's all changing now. As you'll see in the information here, it says effective December 1st. Well, like I said, that's being pushed out to March 1 of 26. But these new rules are coming into play. The proposed first rule, or the initial set of these rules, came out in February of 2024. After some review and comment and revisions, pluses and minuses, they came out with the final rule in August of 2024. Okay? This final rule was the one that said that effective December 1, here's what's going on with respect to these types of transactions. We're going to get into dissecting what we're talking about here in a second. But again, March 1, 2026 is the effective date of these. Now, going back here, if you think about it, because FinCEN is a federal law, this now, instead of the geographic targeting orders that they had been doing since 1986, this is going to apply to the entire country. So it's applicable to all 50 states, all US territories, and tribal lands. basically everywhere in the country, okay? What are we looking to find out? Number one, for all of us involved in the transactions, we've got to know when the transaction's reportable. And if it is a reportable transaction, who's got the obligation to report it? What information has to be garnered and placed into the report that goes to FinCEN, okay? How much time will it take the trained staff, our staffs, for example, to submit the information? And what's the cost going to be to get that information? And finally, what are the penalties involved for not submitting it, okay? Here's the rule. Anybody want to read it? Can you do me a favor, just read it out loud? Read it. Sure. Okay, sorry about that.
A reportable transfer is a non-finance transfer to a transferee entity or transferee trust of an ownership interest in residential real property.
Right? Seems pretty simple, right? It's one sentence. That's the rule though, okay? A non-finance transfer to a transferee entity or a transferee trust for an interest in real property, residential real property, okay? Well, let's look at that from the bottom up. Here's what we're going to be asking. Here are the questions to determine whether or not you've got a reportable transaction. Is this a residential real property as defined in the rule? And we'll get to what is residential real property. Is the transferee or the buyer an entity, meaning a corporation, LLC, limited partnership, something like that? Or is it a trust that's being, is the buyer a trust, okay? And thirdly, is the transfer non-financed? And again, here's the other interesting thing to point out. They're not using the word transaction. They're not using the word purchase. It's a transfer. So it doesn't have to necessarily have a dollar number associated with it. Okay, $1 is adequate consideration to perhaps be a reportable transaction. And again, if you think about it, FinCEN doesn't care what the dollar numbers are necessarily. They're looking for the names. They're trying to find out who are the people that own these entities that are buying these residential real estate for cash. Okay, so it's a transfer. So let's look at the first thing, property type. Are we dealing with residential real property? Residential real property, again, in all 50 states, US territories, and tribal lands. Number one, are we dealing with 1 to 4 family structures, right? Single family homes, that's residential real property. Anything up to 4 units, residential real property, okay? Vacant land where the transferee / buyer intends to build a home, okay? Or basically intends to build a 1 to 4 family structure, okay? So what are we looking at there? Simplest example, you've got an LLC builder, for example, who goes to a subdivision development, buys one of the lots and plans on building a spec home there to sell it. Possibly a reportable transaction, assuming all other factors fit. Yes, we're talking about residential real property. Even though it's vacant land when he buys it, if the intention is for that entity to build a 1 to 4 family structure on it, could be reportable. Third, we're talking about mixed use buildings, including 1 to 4 family. I'm sure you've all seen, for example, bottom portion of a building might be retail out establishment, pizza place, bar, for example, and above that sits residential units, right? That's this mixed use. If the residential units above is 1 to 4 family, could be a reportable transaction, even though the downstairs is commercial per se. Right? And even though you may write the offer to purchase on a transaction like this on a commercial offer, it may be a commercial transaction for you. For purposes of FinCEN, this could be a reportable transaction, even though you're calling it commercial, because you're dealing with that 1 to 4 family portion of it up above. They make it reportable. Okay? You can see down there in the lower right corner of the slide that right now we're talking about residential real property. Chances are this is going to encompass commercial as well. Not quite sure why it hasn't yet, but eventually I think it will. I think everything's going to fall into the mix. Oop,
No, you're fine. I'm just trying to move this out of your way, but it's fine.
Yeah, we're good. Okay, and then any shares in a cooperative housing corporation. We don't have many co-ops here in Wisconsin, but they're also far more popular in other parts of the country, New York especially, for example. But those are also potentially reportable transactions. So again, as you can see there in that last paragraph, it's really kind of encompassing single-family homes, 1 to 4 family units, condos, anything that could perhaps potentially be a reportable transaction. So now we know what type of property we're looking at. What about the transferee? Is the transferee or the buyer a entity? Again, like we said, partnership, corporation, LLC, something like that. Could be a reportable transaction. Or are you a transferee trust? Have you set up a trust and you're the trustee of the trust and you're using it to go buy a piece of real estate? You're paying cash for it, for example, and it's a single family home and you're buying it in the name of your trust, could be a reportable transaction. Okay, and the trust, as you all know, it could be irrevocable or revocable trust. Either way, the term is just trust. Okay, so we're looking at an entity or a trust would also make it a potentially reportable transaction. You're buying the property in your individual names. Would it be a reportable transaction? No. Nope. So anybody buying it, husband and wife, single individuals, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, bless you, not reportable. Now, there are certain exceptions here to the rules, but getting into those is just going down a rabbit hole today for purposes of what we want to just at least get an understanding of. Lastly, and I think the most difficult pillar or element to grasp would be whether or not this is non-financed. Okay, can anybody give me an example of non-financed off the top of your head? Cash, okay, that's a simple one, right? So cash transactions, buyers in LLC, single family home, reportable transaction?
Yes.
Exactly, yes, okay. Here's the extension of the non-financed transaction. So the term non-financed transfer, okay, and again, we're talking about a transfer, not the money part, but the conveyance itself is a transfer. The term non-financed transfer means a transfer that does not involve an extension of credit to all the transferees. So it does not include or involve an extension of credit to all the transferees that's secured by the property to be transferred, and the financial institution that's providing the credit has an obligation to have anti-money laundering programs in place and the obligation to report suspicious activities. So it's a non-financed transaction, a non-financed transfer, unless the property is unless there's a mortgage that is secured by that particular piece of property, and the lending institution has an obligation to report suspicious activities and have an anti-money laundering program in place. So if both of those apply, it's a finance transaction. It doesn't apply. So again, you're talking about your cash transactions. What if I were to be getting a loan and the mortgage was going to be secured by the property, but my lender is a hard money lender? Okay. Hard money lenders, they're going to take a mortgage, and so the financing is going to be secured by the real estate. But a hard money lender does not have any obligation to report suspicious activities, nor do they have an obligation to have anti-money laundering programs in place. So if your LLC buyer is buying a single family home or a 4-family apartment building, and they're getting their financing from hard money lenders, reportable transaction. If they're getting it from hard money lenders, it would be. It would be, again, because this number 2 does not apply, okay? Lenders, and I'm just going to pull names out. North Shore Bank, Wells Fargo, Chase, BMO, okay? First Bank Financial Center. Those folks, when they loan money, they're going to take a mortgage on the real estate, but they also have obligations to report suspicious activities, and they've got to have anti-money laundering programs in place. So a lot of your conventional banks, things like that, those are going to be financed transactions. Okay, so they will be outside and non-reportable transactions. The reason for that, again, is because they've got to report suspicious activities. Yes?
Quick question. Is the title company gonna be responsible for that person, or is a realtor the one who has to get that form filled out?
We will take responsibility of reporting the information on a reportable transaction. What we're asking you, as they mentioned in the WRA video, is that we're gonna ask you if you know, for example, that this could be a reportable transaction, to at least prompt your buyer and your sellers, okay? Because if this is a reportable transaction, the sellers are gonna have to report information. But
But that will be between the title company and either the seller or the
to
buyer.
get the information, yes, but we're hoping, because here's what's gonna happen. Buyers, LLC owners in situations like this are gonna go ballistic until they understand that this is not a title company thing. This is not a real estate agent thing. This is not a Wisconsin thing or a regional thing. This is the federal government that's just expanding its rules.
By the way.
Right, to keep, exactly, to try to combat money laundering. Okay, so until they understand that and say, oh, okay, we'll do the reporting, and we will have, we will have an online portal for both the sellers and the buyers to be able to provide the information. What we're looking for you folks to do is to be our advocates, to at least say, this is something that you have to do. Okay, if somebody's gonna have to report this this information to the title company, using Nightberry would be through our portal, and then we'll do the reporting.
Okay.
Okay. So, again, your standard business, banks, things like that, those would be finance transactions, so not reportable. Here's another example. I'll throw this out there to you. You've got a young couple buying their first home in the name of a trust because their attorney said, hey, buy it in the name of a trust. So they're setting up a trust. They're going to buy their first single-family home, but mom and dad are going to provide the financing for the purchase. They're going to have the son and daughter sign a note and a mortgage back to them. Okay, and then they're going to close, give the money to the kids, and then it'll just be dispersed out to the seller. Okay, reportable transaction?
Yes.
Unfortunately, yes. And why? Because number 2 doesn't apply anymore. Okay, they will be securing their purchase of the property with a mortgage, but mom and dad certainly don't have anti-money laundering reporting requirements, or they don't have to have suspicious activity reporting obligations. Okay, so those are the things. Last example that I like to use. You've got an LLC buyer who is purchasing a piece of vacant land in a development to build a spec home. They're going to get they've got a loan in place, but the mortgage, it's a home equity line of credit that they're using. They're using their line of credit that's secured by something other than this piece of real estate. Reportable transaction. Let's say it's Associated Bank that's got the line of credit. In that case, it would be a reportable transaction, because although Associated Bank has anti-money laundering requirements and they have to maintain suspicious activity reporting, okay, the mortgage or the line of credit is going to be secured by a piece of real estate other than the one that's being transferred. So even though you might say, oh, well, it's Associated Bank, okay, yeah, no worries. It's a non-finance transaction. No, in that case, I mean, it's a finance transaction. No, in that case, it's non-finance because the mortgage is not secured by the property being transferred. So there are certain things you just got, yes?
What do you think of the intent piece on that? Because I feel like if I'm an LLC owner and I want to buy a piece of vacant land, and they're like, well, what are you doing with it? I feel like, screw you, what does it matter? I'm not going to do anything with it.
Understood. You're right. And I think that's going to be the blowback. And as we get it further into this, I'll mention it now. There are lawsuits that are pending against the government for this. There's lawsuits pending in Florida, there's lawsuits pending in Texas, and they're basically at the summary judgment stage. We just don't know what the result's going to be. yet. So you're right, there are constitutional challenges, there are interstate commerce challenges to the enforceability of this. So we just don't know exactly. But I agree, I understand. But the idea is not to say that you're a criminal. It's just like 1099 reporting, for example, for sellers. You gotta report 1099, you gotta report to the government the fact that the property was sold. You know, even if it's an LLC. But that's.
Lynn, did you have a comment?
Yes.
So just like we had changes to the offer to purchase when FERPA happened, do you anticipate changes to the offer to purchase for this?
There is a form here. This is a certification. As a matter of fact, we will see that in the slides, but we'll show this. The WRA has already come up with a certification form or a disclosure form for the buyers and the sellers to sign. I guess the only question I don't know the answer to is whether or not this will be signed only in transactions that you know are reportable, or if this is something that's going to be added to the offer to purchase to be used in all transactions as a just in
Yeah.
case. If it's a non-reportable transaction, well, then it doesn't apply.
I think all would be almost better anyway.
I think it would be-
Because
I
otherwise then
would
the
agree.
fault would fall on a realtor for not getting it signed.
I would agree with you. So I would hope that they will do that in all transactions. I think the intent will be eventually maybe to move that into the offer itself somewhere, like they did with the FinCEN language. But whether, or the FERPA language, but whether or not they're gonna do it or when it's gonna happen, I don't know. But as of right now, you'll see in the slides that there is a separate form as a certification form. So those are the differences of, yes, sir.
So, one of the benefits obviously for cash transactions is that you can close a lot quicker. Is this gonna delay that at all as far as like, because a lot of times you can get it done in like 10 days.
Your people involved are responsive to giving us the information because, and I had touched base on this a while back, part of the information we're gonna need to be collecting is like birthdays, names, social security numbers, addresses of all of the people that are part of the entity, LLC trust. So it all depends on how quickly your people, buyer, seller, whatever, are responsive to
Right.
getting us that information to make it a report.
And this is pushed till March?
March 1.
Okay, so go get your cash buyers and tell them to buy now before March 1st. No, I'm kidding.
That's the other, you know, that's the other idea.
It's like a summary.
Right, the other idea is to say, hey, if you're thinking of buying this property in a trust and you're paying cash for this property that you're going to buy in your trust, and it's a single family home, you may want to buy it in your individual names and then turn around after the closing, maybe after the final owner's policy is issued, turn around then and put it into your trust. Because my understanding is that there's an exemption in that, because it would be a conveyance, right? Into a transferee entity afterwards, okay? But my understanding is that there's an exemption for doing it for estate planning purposes. So if you're conveying back into your trust for estate planning purposes afterwards, it's exempt.
But not in like an LLC or anything.
Not into an LLC.
Pat,
I guess I'm kind of missing, the whole thing is just a disclosure, correct? It can't kill the deal or anything, so I'm gonna fill it out, it's no different than a FERPA.
Well, other than the fact that we as the title company, because we have an obligation to report this,
Right.
other than saying that if we don't have it in time to close, we can't close. So we will require that this information.
But it doesn't really affect, other than having information, whether it's an LLC or a cash or whatever, it can't affect the outcome of the transaction. It's just, right. Like I said, they're not doing an investigation, this is just disclosure. That's
You're
all
exactly
it
right,
is.
just like FERPA, this is saying,
Just
hey,
disclosure, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah, but that's what they're, yeah, and we're just trying to get out in front of this, and again, I think it's primarily because LLC owners are gonna lose their minds on this.
Why?
Based on the question back there of, it's privacy. Why do you think I set up my LLC, for crying out loud? I set it up because I don't necessarily want people to know, or the government especially, to know who I am. I file my tax returns, that kind of stuff. But I think that's where this is gonna be, because it is intrusive information, as you'll see in a minute. So the way I look at it here is we say there are 4 ways to know that it's not that it's a finance transaction and not subject to the rule, okay? So if the lender extends credit to the buyer entity or the buyer entity or the buyer trust, and if they record a mortgage secured by the piece of property, and if the lender has anti-money laundering requirements and suspicious activity reporting requirements, it is a finance transaction and not subject to the rule. Okay. Again, these are, and that's why they call them transfers as opposed to sales or even transactions, okay? Because the dollar number doesn't necessarily matter. Who has to do the reporting? This kind of summarizes exactly what we've been trying to get at here. If Knightberry Title is involved in the transaction, or whatever other title company is the actual settlement agent in the transaction, that particular company that is basically preparing the closing disclosures and dispersing the funds, it's Knightberry, we're going to do the reporting. Okay. They have a cascading order of how that works here. And the reason they do that is because we're talking about transfers. So not always, there may be situations where a title company like us is not necessarily involved in the transaction. And because it's a transfer, they say it starts with the person who who's listed as the settlement agent on the settlement statement. Okay. Or next, the person that prepared the settlement statement or the closing statement. It just goes down a line. So that's the what do they call it? The cascading order of who's responsible to do the reporting. Comes down to, as you get down towards the bottom, if there's a person who prepares a deed and they're the only one that's involved in the transaction, i.e. a lawyer, who in essence is going to just convey mom's property, mom's home for free to the son who owns an LLC, that might be a reportable transaction. And down there at the bottom, then the attorney would have an obligation to maybe do the reporting on that one. But they've got the cascading order there to capture both sale and non-sale transfers. It would start with us at the top, or the parties in that cascading order could work out an agreement that says, okay, Knightberry, we're supposed to be reporting this, or like the attorney, for example, but will you report it for us? You know, that kind of thing, as long as there's an agreement in place. What type of information are we going to need? There's 7 items there. Who's the reporting person, i.e. Knightberry, okay? The transferee entity or the buyer or the trust. Transferee's beneficial owners. So if we're looking at an LLC, for example, who are the beneficial owners of that LLC? If we're looking at a trust, who are the trustees or the settlers of that trust, okay? Who owns it? The seller or the transferor, the property that's transferred, payments made on behalf of the transferee or the buyer. So what they're looking at is, where's the buyer's money coming from? We want to know what bank he's pulling his money out of, what the account number is, and all that fun stuff. We want to know where the buyer's getting his dough. If he's using hard money to buy as part of the financing, because it would be a reportable transaction, they're going to want information about the account and things like that of the hard money lender, where that money's coming from, the loan portion. And again, this is where you folks come in. Okay? What we're looking for down here in the bottom, in that bottom rectangle, it talks about what is a beneficial owner of the real estate. Or, I mean, who's going to be the beneficial owner of this entity, okay? And they say it also requires reporting of each beneficial owner. And they talk about a beneficial owner is one of 2 things. You're a beneficial owner of this entity if you own 25% or more of it, okay? Or if you have substantial control over the operation of the LLC. Okay? And then the third thing is if you're just a person who's going to be signing the documents. Okay? You might be required to report. But as far as a beneficial ownership interest in the property or in the LLC or the entity that's buying, you have, if you own more than 25%, if you have 4 people or 5 folks that own 20% apiece, well, that's the full ownership interest. Nobody owns 25%, but now who are the ones that control it? And if all 5 of you have controlling responsibilities, well, then all 5 of you are going to be listed on the reporting information to be sent to the FinCEN. Okay. Here's that same disclosure right here that we've got, that I can pass some of them out. I don't have a whole bunch of these, unfortunately, I apologize. Get there. But this is just, again, this is just sort of a, that's not.
I would say it looks like they have those.
Yeah, they've got it right there. And as long as you can take a peek there, they're really just talking about the information that they're going to require from the seller of the transaction. And like I said, as far as the seller's concerned on this, it's really looking for nothing more than what we would be asking for as the settlement agent for 1099ing purposes. Entity name, address, federal ID number, things like that. If it's an entity trust that's selling, okay, if it's a trust that's selling, it's the same thing. Name of the trust, who the trustees are. That would be a little bit different because we want the name of the trust, the address. If there is a federal ID number for the trust, they want that. If there is no federal ID number, it would be social security numbers, and then the names of the trustees. That would be the only individual pieces that they would want. The buyer's side is where there's much more information that's needed. And you can see that here. The place to point out, and again, we're going to have this in an online portal setting for both the seller side and the buyer side. So they'll be able to jump into the portal and securely enter this information into us. But it's nice for you to have this because this is what you're going to want to present, you know, to perhaps these entity buyers, transferee buyers and whatnot, to say, here's the information we're going to need. Okay. And the most important stuff with respect to the buyer is on page 7 of entity buyer. Take a look at page 5 of 9 on the buyer form. Full legal name, date of birth, residential street address, citizenship, country of citizenship, your ID number, social security number, or if you're not a US citizen, whatever applicable number that they have issued in that country. And then the reason for being the reporting person. Are you a beneficial owner because you own 25% or more of this entity? Or are you a controlling person that you control the management and what goes on? Or are you just one of the people who are going to be signing the closing documents at the closing? Okay, and there has to be at least one signer, obviously, because one person is going to be signing the documents at the closing. But for all beneficial owners, all controllers, got to have that information in here on that form. And the interesting thing about this is that it has to be certified by the person who's submitting the info. Okay, so when they're entering it into the portal, they're going to be certifying at the end that this information is true and correct, because we're going to have to rely on it when we submit it to FinCEN after the transaction. Okay. We will add information to our title commitment. Like I said, this form here is available then that we just showed, that certification form for FinCEN for your transactions for the buyer and seller to sign. We're going to add some language to our title commitments that in essence says, look, if this is a reportable transaction, we're going to need this information from both the buyers and the sellers. And in essence, we won't be able to close if we don't have it. And, you know, and if they try to say, oh, well, don't worry about it, I'll get you the information after the closing, I'm sure it's going to be way too much out of sight, out of mind. And so we've just decided that we can't close unless we have that information already submitted beforehand. Yes, sir.
Can I clarify one thing? So I could see a situation where a seller may go, I know this is just for money laundering, but I don't want my stuff getting reported to the government because they could use it for X, Y, and Z, and I'm not comfortable with that. And then an entity would maybe not want to sell to a person who's in a cash transaction. But what you're saying is this really isn't fundamentally different from like what's reported anyways.
On the seller side.
On the seller side, when it's like a 1099.
That's correct.
It would be unreasonable then for a seller to have any type of like issue with doing a cash transaction or something.
That's correct.
Okay.
I think the only addition is if the seller is a trust, the form asks for the names of the trustees and their addresses. I think maybe even social security numbers of the trustees.
I can just see a seller saying that. So
Sure.
Be ready to be like, no, this doesn't change anything.
Primarily the same information that we're already reporting anyway on your 1099s for tax purposes. Mhm. The reason that nobody wants to mess around with this kind of thing is that the civil and criminal penalties are nasty. Nobody wants to go to FinCEN jail. I don't want to go to FinCEN jail. I don't even want to go to FinCEN fine. Okay? I don't want FinCEN fine, I don't want FinCEN jail. So they separate the civil liability from negligent violations. Oh, shoot, I'm sorry, I didn't know I had to do it. To willful violations, meaning you're just dumb and you're just deciding that you're not going to do it, okay? So you don't want to deal with that, and you don't want to deal with the criminal penalties either, because you don't want to go to jail. Key points, and again, this is where I mentioned, this is all still sort of fluid. Perhaps that's why the government has extended the effective date of these rules to March 1st. Maybe they're waiting to see if they're going to get some decisions here. Now, the interesting thing about this, though, is that although I mentioned it's national law, these are U.S. district courts in Florida and in Texas that have filed these lawsuits. Right? Recently, the Supreme Court came down and said, if there's a U.S. district court that issues an injunction, and they used to say the district court would issue an injunction nationwide and would apply all across the country. Well, the U.S. Supreme Court just said recently, can't do that. Okay, if you've got a U.S. district court decision, bless you, your U.S. district court is only applicable as an injunction in that particular district. Okay, that decision would have to be appealed to the appellate court there, and then eventually perhaps up to the Supreme Court of the United States. So until either a district court here in Wisconsin or the Seventh Circuit comes up with a decision, and or it goes all, one of these other decisions go up to the Supreme Court, just because there's an injunction in Texas or Florida doesn't necessarily mean that this won't start in Wisconsin come March 1. Because we would be pushing forward until there's either a decision here that applies in Wisconsin or the US Supreme Court says. Okay? So again, there are these different arguments of what's going on, what could happen. Again, what they've done already here is delay the rule. They could change some of the rule. They could decide that some of it is inapplicable and not enforceable and enforce some of the other stuff. Okay, or there might just be no changes. Who knows? And that final form there, I'm not quite sure if that's the final, the buyer-seller forms that are in front of you. Those are real close to the format of everything that's going to be available. Whether or not that's the final thing, I know that our general counsel at Knightberry has been trying to get with FinCEN and say, guys, when am I going to have the final stuff? We want to be able to set this up in a portal and be able to get it out to folks if it's an applicable transaction. And she said, are we going to know by October 1st? I don't know. Are you going to know by October 15th? I don't know. So we think this is real close to the information and the format of how it's supposed to look, but until the final form comes out, we won't know. But like I said, it's going to be in a portal for buyers and sellers to submit the information securely. Yes, ma'am.
So for title purposes.
Yes.
When we collect this information, do we have to go through certified, or let's say the buyer wants to? Can we collect that information in person, or do they have to?
Well, you wouldn't be going to certified to get this info.
Like,
Okay.
yeah, so we
The
could
portal,
confirm
she needs
there.
this portal.
Yeah, the portal.
Oh, would you have to go through certified still for wire transferring sellers' funds? Is,
No, she needs to collect the people's.
Like to verify for their identity. Is
oh,
that
would
what
we,
you're saying that we have to do?
well, first of all, I guess I'd like to know what the question is though. Help me out.
It's an internal question, we'll talk later.
Oh, okay. Okay. But so I'm glad I was able to help.
Yeah.
So again, lastly, just some things to consider here. How are you going to identify the transactions covered by the rule? Well, again, there's the three elements that we're really talking about, right? Are we talking about residential real estate? Are we talking about a buyer entity or a buyer trust? And is the transaction non-financed versus financed? And the elements, we can certainly get these slides out to you folks that you can take a peek at them and get a little bit more familiar. We've talked about how we're going to collect that information. I don't know what other groups are going to do, but like I said, we're going to be doing it electronically to make it as easy as possible for both the buyers and the sellers to submit it. I know there's one in here, we talked about storing the records. You won't have to worry about that. You shouldn't be getting involved with, in essence, getting this information either. All your job should be is just to tell your potential buyers and sellers, this is a reportable transaction. Here's some information that you're gonna have to get to the title company. Okay. The one point down there about will you determine a fee for compliance? What we're talking about, what I understand is that with Nightberry transactions, we'll be charging the buyer. So it's a buyer charge because it's technically a buyer issue, okay? So we're charging the buyers $345, okay? If it's a reportable transaction. And I think the idea or the reason is because FinCEN has actually estimated that it's gonna take 2 hours and 45 minutes or something crazy like that to complete all of the filing requirements. And my understanding is that the information that comes in has to be at least 60 or 65% complete, otherwise they won't accept it. So there's some labor that's involved there. And again, I don't know what percentage of these transactions it will affect for you folks, okay? But, again, I can't imagine that every single one of you here is going to go, without having to at least look at this and determine whether or not you might have a reportable one. I would imagine a majority of you, at least at some point in time, maybe not every one of your transactions, maybe not a vast majority of the percentage, but I think you're going to have some transactions that are ultimately going to be reportable. So it's just better to be ready to go. Any other questions? Yes.
Just to make sure, because you said this, but this is a transaction I see a lot where I'll get a retired person who is going to buy a property and then they decide that they want to buy it in their trust name. That's probably reportable, but if they buy it in their own name and close it and then transfer it into their trust later, like with the title company or attorney or something, maybe not reportable.
That second transaction may not be reportable. Now,
Okay.
again, it's one of those things where I can say, hey, here's what the rule says, because if you're buying it in the name of your trust and it's a cash purchase and it's a single family home, that's got all the earmarks of a reportable transaction,
Yep.
right? I would always, again, still strongly encourage your folks to touch base with their lawyer
Yep.
about it.
Yep.
But the rule certainly would seem to say if it is not a reportable transaction if I buy this property in my individual name. If the transfer is in my individual name, it's fine, right? But then if I go afterwards and transfer the property for $0, because the dollar number doesn't matter, and I'm transferring it into my trust, which is an entity trust, it's residential real property. Because it's for estate planning purposes, that's an exemption under the FinCEN rules. So that's my understanding of how it works. They should definitely still touch base with their attorneys, but they say close in your individual name, then transfer it over later on into your trust. I think the question came up, well, what about your LLCs and things like that? I know somebody mentioned that. I don't know that you can transfer a property into your LLC for estate planning purposes. Not quite sure. There might be succession planning and stuff like that with the LLC. That's a great question for an estate planning attorney or somebody like that later on, once these rules start getting digested by everybody. But that would need to be.
Scott, and for the agents, would that be what your best suggestion would be as the questions kind of start rolling in? If this is not a title company thing, we don't make the rules on this. You're better off talking to, would you point them in the direction of an attorney or would you point them in the direction of a CPA or an accountant? Anybody comes to us with 1099 questions, we're like, yeah, talk to your accountant.
Yeah.
In this case, where would you point?
I think initially, we're going to be really surprised that there are going to be a vast majority of lawyers that have absolutely no idea what the hell FinCEN reporting requirements are. It may well be an accountant thing for a while.
So get your law degrees. No.
Yeah,
kidding.
All right, but I think it's gonna take a while. Sherry and I, as a matter of fact, are presenting to the state bar on Friday, to the real estate attorneys on Friday, and we're also then presenting it in November to the estate planning attorneys. So hopefully we're gonna start getting that word out, and the WRA and everybody's just gotta, get the word out about these new rules, because they are coming. So I would say all state planners, attorneys, their accountants, to find out whether or not, I mean, you can actually kind of run through the elements. I mean, the elements aren't that difficult, they're relatively black and white, okay? But I think it's ultimately it's the attorney's decision of whether or not they've got to report the transaction. I think we obviously would look at it too, though, and say, I don't know. I mean, I think this is as a title company, we're closing, I'd have to look at that and say, well, what happens if a buyer and seller say, this is a non-reportable transaction? We're going to require that they at least provide us with information that would support the exemption under the rules. So if the parties or the buyer is going to say this is non-reportable, we're going to say before we close it, show me in the rules where your particular transaction now makes it exempt. Anything else?
All right, well, thank
Cool.
you.
I hope that helps. If you have any questions, though, feel free to call.
We'll post up the contact information and the links for you guys as well, so you guys have that on social media and sent out to you. Real quick, just October calendar is out. For those of you guys that did not realize, I've had a few people say, oh, we'll do that in October. October is tomorrow. So we are in the fourth quarter, people. We are in the home stretch. We have a lot of events and activities that are happening. Bold is happening every Thursday for the month of October. So for those of you guys that are in Bold, your calendar is wiped out clean for Thursday. A lot of new stuff happening on the calendar. We are starting the 12-week year book club tomorrow at 11 o'clock. So if you have not read the 12-week year, or you have, please attend at 11. I will be running that. Brian Morin is amazing. And the 12-week year, we have exactly 12 weeks to the end of the year. So now is the time. Yep. Epic Mortgage is doing a lunch and learn on Tuesday, October 7th at 12 noon. So save the date. And Opportunity Knocks is coming back Thursday, October 16th from 4 to 6 at the Zufari conference. It's going to be more of like a cocktail hour, but you can, same thing as before, if you're interested in joining a team, being an admin for a team, talking with a team, this is your opportunity to get in front of all the teams that KW at all of our locations have to offer. They will have a booth there. And then Trump. Oh,
I was gonna say, go ahead. I'll just got one other thing to mention.
Yeah.
When you're done.
Okay. Trunk or Treat, Saturday, October 18th. That is coming up fast, guys. 19 days away. So we need more vehicles. Make sure you guys have everything ready. Get your entries in. Trunk or Treat. This is a huge event that you guys can push out to your clients as your own individual event. So this is your opportunity. Get plugged in. And then October 20th. Do you have a question? Okay. Yes, please sign up. October 21st, we're doing a blood drive. So they will be here set up. Blood drive, all of the information is set up for you guys. We have been posting the flyers. We'll get them reposted for you guys. But make sure you invite all of your clients and let them know that you're hosting a blood drive. And then Pi Day, Saturday, November 22nd, 9 to 12. So that'll also be approaching very fast and furious. What's the deadline to get there? It happened, right?
So if you haven't registered, you still want to partake in Pi Day, please send me an email. If you did register, I'm actually working on those registrations for you guys. We'll have them out to you by the end of the week so that you can start marketing them. And then orders will be due on November 6th. So you'll have about a month to send that out to your sphere. Cool.
Awesome. All right. And then coming soon in buyer needs. Anybody have anything? Tamron, go ahead, and then I'll come to you.
We actually had a commercial property that's been listed for a while. However, it's $2 million, and the sellers have gotten to the space now where they're willing to do a lease or like a land contract for the first year with some special creative financing terms before actually completing the full purchase. It'd be great for somebody that is already established, that has like some type of daycare already, that's looking for like a second location that's there. So if anybody has any commercial buyers that's out there looking for like a group home or adult daycares, like this would be the perfect setting for somebody that's looking to expand, but it is going to have to be somebody that does have some skin in the game for that to take place at that price point. It is right off of 66th and Bradley Road, I would say, so it's really ducked off in a really nice area.
Steph, you had.
Yes, I have a beautiful luxury listing in Caledonia. So if you have anyone looking for something 5-bed, 4-bath, 3-car garage, it's on 1.25 acre, but the HOA is 15 homes and they own 65 acres. So surrounding these 15 homes on a cul-de-sac, it's like 41 acres of nature. There's trails, there's a horse farm that you can like pet horses, there's a pond, and they maintain all these trails. They test all the septics, all the holding tanks every 6 months for only $850 a year for the HOA. So 925 Caledonia, it's 2 minutes off the freeway, so really easy to get to the airport or to Illinois. So see me if you have any buyers.
All right, Pat.
I have and it's actually been on the market for like 3 weeks, but I didn't talk about it. I have a condo on Water Street. It is on the north end. It's between Brady and North Avenue. It's on the same block as Bel Air. And it's 340,000, 2-bedroom, 2 full bath. It's a 4-story building. It's on the 4th floor on the corner, but it doesn't have a river view, even though it's on the river. We've had 0 showings.
Oh no. Okay. Anybody? Oh, go ahead, Don.
We have a delayed, it went into delayed today, it's in Springdale, super cute, 3-bedroom, 1.5 bath, attached screen porch and a fully finished rec room. It's showing starts Thursday, $375.
Amazing open house crew.
Yes, an amazing.
What street is it
That
on?
will totally sell it.
What street is it?
Oakwood Street, okay, yeah.
Amy.
I have a 2-bedroom, 1.5 bath condo in Menominee Falls. They've done over $50,000 worth of work in the last 4 months. Coming available, I'm listing it Thursday. It's a townhouse style basement, $259,900.
Oh wow.
And then I have a 3-bedroom, 2 full bath, fully updated home in Cudahy, partially finished basement with bar for $379,900 coming available on Saturday.
Awesome. All right. Anyone else? All right. And then you said you had something
Yeah,
else
just
to add.
lastly to point out, the WRA convention, I believe, is going on now, and I think today they were doing I don't know if it's Corey or who might have been doing it. We're gonna be doing a FinCEN type presentation too, so I don't know if those activities are taped as well and available for you folks to view.
Carly Tatum is there right now at the WRA convention, by the way.
And if they are available, again, just to suck in more of this information, hearing it more and more often is just gonna help. So if you can hear somebody else's presentation, I strongly encourage you to do it.
All right, guys, that's a wrap. Thank you. You get your little, oh, no, it's in here.